Hello everyone, for my next video I'm going to be looking at the next stage in the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, or saga, which is the 2020 trial in the UK. Now, I've already said how Johnny Depp sued the UK, or sued the Sun from the UK, thinking that they had completely lied and made the whole thing up without reference to Amber Heard. He thought that Amber Heard was still on his side, that she was still saying to everyone that nothing had happened. But secretly, behind the scenes, she had been telling this story to the Sun. And while the stories that the Sun produced and what she told the Sun were not quite the same story, most of them were. And that was like a kick in the teeth to Johnny Depp. Of course, he then sued her directly before the trial was held. And he sued her directly for the op-ed she put in the Washington Post, because by that stage he knew that she had betrayed him. She had broken the law as far as the divorce proceedings were concerned, as civil law granted, but a contract law that she had blatantly broken. And he was sure that when she made the op-ed that she had broken it again. He knew this time. He knew that she was referring to him. He knew that everything that she'd said she would do was a complete lie. She had told lies upon lies upon lies. And so when they got to the UK trial in 2020, finally hearing a case from 4 years prior, he knew that she was a complete villain. She had completely backflipped on what she said she was going to do. She'd taken his money and with a big grin on her face had completely lied about everything. Not just lying about that, but lying about it. And then lying about that. There were lies on top of lies on top of lies on top of lies, and he had trusted her far more than he should have. When the UK case was heard, it wasn't a jury trial and it wasn't live streamed. Limited information came out. We do know that there were questions about the judge being related to the editor of The Sun. Whether that made a difference, we don't know, but there were suspicions that it might have. Some of the evidence wasn't allowed in. Got Adam Waldman, who was Johnny Depp's lawyer, to speak to such British tabloids as the Daily Mail, and he leaked information such as Amber Heard admitting on tape to abusing Johnny Depp, such as the lie about the donations, which she didn't actually give, and other things as well. And he presented to the Daily Mail another British tabloid that rivals The Sun for their ludicrous statements, and he said to them what their plan was. These statements that he made in the middle of the UK trial were later used against him and against Johnny Depp himself in the US trial as 3 defamatory statements by Adam Waldman on behalf of Johnny Depp. They were legal arguments, and yet the jury still found against him in one of them. Somehow, magically, deciding that Adam Waldman and Johnny Depp were the same person, and that legal statements as part of their angle were somehow false and also stated to be fact. Well, legal arguments are always opinions, but nonetheless, that was what happened. Of course, Adam Waldman had done the wrong thing by leaking bits that were meant to be suppressed, or at least not displayed, and he was taken off the case. But it wasn't perhaps true to say that it was defamatory, but that was more along the lines, many suspect, of a compromise, a verdict which said, well, perhaps Amber Heard was mostly guilty, but maybe Johnny Depp wasn't perfect either. And when the UK trial was heard, it was one which Johnny Depp couldn't win. Had Amber Heard taken his side, he was a chance. Had she gone up on the stand and said, I wasn't abused. I never said that to the son. And then the son saying all these different things, there's a chance that he would have won. But as soon as she switched to the other side, the chances were minimal to none. We can look at the case, and some people will say, in light of the Virginia verdict, it should have gone the other way. But realistically, perhaps it shouldn't have. Perhaps that was the right verdict, given the evidence. Some of the judges' comments saying, oh yes, Johnny Depp was wrong because he was drunk and on drugs and therefore might have done something in his sleep effectively, were a bit strange, to say the least, especially in light of the ultimate evidence under much heavier scrutiny in the US trial. But nonetheless, that was the verdict, and Johnny Depp didn't even get to have an appeal heard. They rejected multiple attempts at appeals, didn't even get the appeal listened to. It was so ludicrous to suggest that he could possibly win. And then we went to the US and he won. How could he have won if he'd lost in the UK? It was an impossible task. If you've already lost a case, how could you possibly win it if it's tried a second time? And yet it wasn't the same case, of course, because we had Amber Heard on trial instead of a newspaper. But it was over essentially the same kind of issues. We had the issue that a judge had already ruled that Johnny Depp was wrong, that he was a wife beater. Or at least that Amber Heard and the newspaper were reasonably consistent in suggesting such. And so long as Amber Heard wasn't committing perjury, he was a wife beater. But the US trial questioned effectively whether she was committing perjury, and the answer was that she was. Now, she has not been tried for perjury, hasn't been charged, but in order for these two cases to make sense, she should be charged with perjury for what she said in the UK. But it's a high burden to reach. It's a tough ask, and yet somehow he managed it against a jury of his peers. Somehow, against all odds, he still managed to win. It's a phenomenal result, and even if somehow Amber Heard wins the appeal, and very few people think she will, and there's a new case ordered and somehow he loses that new case, or even if somehow the verdict is completely flipped over the other side and she wins without a new case, even if that happens, it's still a major victory for him. It was against all odds, against every possible scenario was against him, and yet he still won. There is a result of this. There's two, really. One is that men who have been the victim of domestic violence are coming forward in record numbers, especially in America, but right around the world. A lot of men have been silenced before because of laws and attitudes that said that men can't be victims, and yet we saw here that they could be. Equally, we've also seen that women are being charged and prosecuted for lying about domestic violence, something that was rarely, if ever, done before. But we're now seeing that women do lie sometimes, and when they are, they're being prosecuted for defamation. Now, some women's rights activists have said, well, this is wrong, we don't want to see male victims. And some of them have said, well, it's wrong that women are being questioned. But is it really wrong? We're not questioning the legitimate victims. We're questioning the ones who lie. We're questioning the ones who didn't even see a judge but just told lies about people. And that's the kind of case that this was. Remember, Johnny Depp was never charged, let alone found guilty of any crime. This was not a criminal trial. It was not the result of after a criminal trial. She got a protection order, but that has no evidentiary requirements. He wasn't proven to have done anything wrong as part of that. And could it be a bad thing? Only if this is the wrong verdict. But with the weight of evidence that he had to provide to win, it couldn't be a bad verdict. The UK case could have been. Arguably it might be. But that doesn't really have a long-standing negative effect on society. It's not really making any major difference. It was a simple case, tried by a single judge, not live streamed, not made public, no jury, and Amber Heard was not required to produce evidence beyond just her speaking about what she felt like talking about. There was no discovery. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one, and thanks for listening. Bye bye now.